You're listening to Let's Talk Creation with Todd Wood and Paul Garner, the creation show where we learn, grow, and worship.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Creation with Todd and Paul. I am Todd Wood.
And I'm Paul Garner.
All right, so before we get rolling here, we do want to remind you, give a like on this video, do subscribe to the channel. If you are listening on a platform other than YouTube, we would appreciate, your reviews. Share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with your church members, share it with your enemies, whoever you want to share it with. We would love for you to spread the word about what we're working on here at Let's Talk Creation. We really appreciate your support. We really appreciate you listening. Thanks for joining us. So today we got a bit of an unusual episode. We have a guest here, but actually, Paul, you're kind of on the hot seat because you're one of the guests too.
Yeah, this is an unusual situation to be in, isn't it? So
yeah,
I'm one of the interviewees.
Yeah. Little bit unusual. Sometimes we do sort of interview each other in our conversations, but this one is more explicit. We have with us Stephen Lloyd here. Stephen comes to us from Cambridge. Are you actually in Cambridge right now?
I am in Cambridge, yeah. It's good to be here. People may notice the background is a bit different to what it was on the previous two occasions I've been on this podcast. Things are a bit tidier behind me.
Yeah.
Not in my old shared office. I'm in a bedroom in our new house.
Oh, okay. So the old office is gone. That's unfortunate. Yeah, so, all right. Well, today we have a conversation all about a project you guys are working on called the Cambridge House. I don't know if that's going to be the permanent name of this thing, but we definitely wanted to chat about your intentions here since you are going full steam ahead with this. And yeah, so Paul, how about we just start it off with you? Tell us exactly what Cambridge House is. And what's your goal here? What are you trying to do?
Well, basically, Cambridge House is a placeholder name. Whatever we end up calling it, it probably won't be called Cambridge House. But the idea
There's
is
a lot of houses in Cambridge, yeah.
There are a lot of houses in Cambridge.
Yeah. So basically, the clue is in the name, really. Cambridge House. We want to set up some kind of centre, community in Cambridge, a place which obviously has an international reputation, a place where things happen, where lots of academic activity takes place. And we want to use this centre to transform the whole landscape of the Origins debate, both here in the UK and further afield. So that's the big vision.
So the idea
is that is a big vision. So we really want to create a study centre that is a resource to the church that is involved in promoting and participating in creationist research, in training and mentoring the next generation of creationists. So that's kind of the vision. And really, Stephen is at the heart of this because he has recently relocated to Cambridge from his former home down in the southeast, down in Kent, to sort of head up this project. So I probably should hand over to Stephen and he can tell you a bit about his sort of personal situation at the moment, having just moved into his new home.
Yeah, I mean, I actually technically only finished my employment as a pastor a week ago. So I'd been a pastor in a place called Gravesend in Kent, in southeast England, for just over 16 years. And various things have come together. It's a long story, but various things have come together to convince us that this was, God's plan for us to finish there. God had done some really encouraging things in the church. But there was also so many opportunities coming up with the creation work and this whole sort of burden for this sort of idea we've had, I guess, for a decade or more, for a sort of something like this in Cambridge. But it's only in the last year or two that has become something we thought, well, actually, we should actually maybe do this now. So to cut a long story short, I've moved up here with the family. We're in a rented house, and we're trying to get something started, and that's what we're here to talk about, I guess.
Wow. So I don't want to cut this long story short, because as I was going over your notes that you sent for this episode, you've got some personal deep history here with this idea. This is not just Paul just decided one day, hey, we should have a study center, and you said, okay, I'll move to Cambridge. There's a bit more to this in your personal history. Can you fill us in a little bit on that?
Okay, well, I guess it's not new to me to be here in Cambridge. I was here for another 16 years, from 1990 onwards. So I was here as an undergraduate, postgraduate. I had different research fellowship jobs, and then did a theology course for a year, and then my final year in Cambridge was actually as a postman. But that's when I was beginning to move into then go into pastoral ministry. So during that time in Cambridge, I mean, I suppose when I first arrived as an undergrad, I wasn't that interested in creationism, but I sort of thought I had a duty as a Christian studying science to have something to say on it, because people would ask me in the church, say, you're a scientist, what. So I did end up sort of going into this a bit and discovering that some of the sort of problems I was coming across, there wasn't really materials out there that really addressed this. And it was more as a postgrad, I guess, I got into this. I was praying with a good friend. He was very interested in this issue. He's from a totally different sort of academic background. But we would pray about for the church, I guess, to have a renewed confidence in the historical reliability of Scripture. We accept it for the resurrection, but actually, what about going back all the way, including creation, where, of course, it gets the most controversial? So we were praying about this. We started a little group to help students that were coming here as creationists to sort of stay creationists. We called it SH because it was a secret group and not publicly advertised, and that helped to get people along. Nothing like a bit of secrecy and subterfuge to get things talked about. So we were running a group then to try and do that. And in some ways, what we're trying to do now is to go back to some of the things that we were doing then, but it's obviously different now. I'm a lot older for a start, and it's no longer a sort of bunch of contemporaries having a bit of a laugh together. So it's different, but the same basic idea of wanting to, both encourage students, in their creationist beliefs and to help them to be better informed in those, and to ultimately get them involved in research for some of them anyway, where that's a calling for them. But also I think to impact students across the board. It's not we want all the Christian students to see the relevance of creationism, but actually even broader than that. Ultimately, this is what everyone needs.
So you feel like I often think in my own ministry work, especially with young people, that I feel like I'm trying to fill in the gap that I had when I was a student, sort of trying to become that older professor that helps people out. Is that basically your motive here? Or you're sort of trying to recapture what you had?
I guess, I mean, it perhaps wasn't so sort of personally crucial for me in the sense that I wasn't studying. I wasn't in an area where evolutionary stuff really impacted in a very direct way. So it wasn't that I was studying geology or genetics or whatever. So I was a little bit detached from the sort of personal crisis sort of sense of this, but in a broader scope of just seeing, why don't people talk about this? Why is creationism so sort of ridiculed in the church? Never mind, the world outside. So it was more at that level. So we are. I can see that thinking, and I think we need to be sort of intentional going forward. If we want, new creationist research, we perhaps need to actually be doing something to help creationist researchers to become researchers, and so we need a bit of intentionality about that.
Yeah,
I think one of the things that I've kind of become very aware of, and that this has sort of factored quite a lot in my thinking, is that we don't really have many creationists here in the UK who are well qualified in the most relevant disciplines to do origins research. And I think that there's a popular creationist movement, but when we sometimes encounter students, there's a kind of risk averse sort of mindset, I think, that often we encounter, where people are afraid of going into disciplines that they might see as dangerous, that might where they might encounter things that run into conflict with their creationist beliefs. And so quite often we find that creationist students are sort of training at university in areas and all worthy areas, of course, sort of engineering or medicine or whatever it is, but they're avoiding some of those subjects where you're going to encounter evolutionary thinking and deep time thinking more directly. So, like Stephen says, paleontology and geology and and population genetics and all these kinds of things. But those are the areas where actually we really need creationist expertise. And so one of the things that has sort of motivated me is to think about ways that we can train and mentor and educate that next generation to become the creationist researchers of the future, as well as just having a more positive impact on how people sort of approach the whole creation debate more generally within the church here in the UK.
And actually to engage with the debate full stop. I mean, the biggest problem is it's just not, it's almost an impolite conversation topic, and it's just not talked about because it's seen as too controversial or whatever.
Yeah.
So to actually get some discussion and debate on this is.
Do you sometimes get the attitude that young Earth creationism is some sort of American thing, and you Brits don't want to have much to do with all those Americans and their weird ideas?
Yeah, that is totally how it's often presented. Yeah, this is some strange American import. Yeah.
And I think we do have to recognise, we're kind of working in a very different sort of context and culture here in the UK. So Britain, despite the fact that it, has an established church, we don't have church-state separation. Actually, we're a very secular country. More secular than the US is, and so that's kind of the culture that we're in. We don't really have any university level education, Christian education in the UK, apart from things like Bible colleges and seminaries and those sorts of things. But if you want to go and study, biology, we don't have any Christian colleges where you can do that. So we've had to sort of think a bit more strategically and a bit more creatively about how do we reach Christian students who inevitably are going to be studying in secular institutions, in secular universities. And if we're wanting to encourage them to study difficult subjects, how do we help them through that process? How do we get alongside them and make sure that they stay creationists apart from anything else? But more than that, actually become enthusiastic and wanting to be involved and to contribute in the future.
Yeah.
And I think, this is probably true of both the US as well, that the creationism is very weak at a sort of culturally shaping level. There are a lot of creationists, around churches around the country. You talk to different ordinary people in churches, you would find a lot of creationists, but far less who are then leaders, and then leaders of the sort of, I don't know, evangelical, the sort of evangelical leadership, the sort of the church culture shaping people. It is largely absent. I mean, that's I think changing a little bit actually, but certainly historically that's been the case. And so when it has that sort of very weak profile within the church, even more so, therefore, obviously in the culture at large, even though talk to a load of non-Christians, there's actually a good degree of skepticism amongst a lot of non-Christians about evolutionary ideas at some sort of vague, sometimes misunderstood level. So it's not even that the culture is actually totally hostile to anything like sort of creationism, but the people that sort of shape the culture and rule the culture or whatever, it very much is.
Yeah.
Which is
It's-
one
it's-
reason, I guess, why we want to be in a place like Cambridge where leaders are shaped, in all dimensions, all spheres of life. Because if you want to shape a culture, you're going to have to shape the leaders. So if you like, we're trying to do this in the most difficult place to do it, because it's the place with the most, strategic significance. We could have set up a study centre in the middle of nowhere. It would have been a whole load cheaper. I guess we could have done some interesting research, but I don't think it would quite have the same impact. So coming to do it here is much more difficult and a million times more expensive too.
As someone who has a ministry in the middle of nowhere, you are absolutely right. Getting students, getting connections with students and getting them involved, that is far more difficult. Yes, that's very true. So let me ask you, I mean, you raised this point here. Cambridge is a big place and it's important for shaping leaders of tomorrow. Why Cambridge specifically? Why not London or Oxford or Edinburgh or one of these other great educational places in the UK? Why Cambridge?
Well, that's a fair question. I mean, in one sense, you could potentially do this in some of those other towns you mentioned. Maybe not Oxford. We're not so keen on them. But the old Cambridge-Oxford rivalry.
Right.
I think part of it is actually what is already here. I mean, it's partly it's a place. Obviously, I know well and better. So we have these connections. Paul lives actually quite near to Cambridge. So, I mean, there's some very sort of practical reasons like that. But there are also other groups here who, are doing different ministries, who wouldn't necessarily agree with everything we're doing, but that form a sort of complementary ministry to what we're doing. You've got the Biblical Studies Centre, Tyndale House. You've got the Discovery Institute are setting up a Cambridge ministry. There's other sort of local apologetics ministries as well that are trying to sort of, form a Christian mind and that sort of thing, where we can be sort of, something alongside what they're doing.
And of course, Faraday Institute is here. So yeah, so we've also got, well, it's kind of the equivalent, I suppose, of BioLogos.
Yes, they'd be big fans, I'm sure, of this idea.
Yeah, so it's the sort of leading organisation that's promoting theistic evolution in the UK, and they're in Cambridge too. So it's a kind of hub, isn't it?
It is a hub, and that they're entitled to have their view, their centre here. Give their voice. We're fine with that. We just want to be able to put our voice in here as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you want to think of it more broadly, I mean, there's all other groups here as well. There's a Muslim college that's sort of being set up. Yeah, I mean, not a college part of the university, but a college sort of study centre. Actually, not that dissimilar in ethos in some ways to what we're sort of thinking of. So people see the significance of being in a city like this. So when you've got that sort of melting pot, that close proximity of lots of people, talking about stuff, it is an obvious place to have that influence.
So how big is Cambridge University now? Do you know off the top of your head? How many students are we talking about? Are we talking tens of thousands?
It's not enormous by university standards. My figures are probably 30 years out of date. I mean, it's of the order of sort of 10,000 undergraduates. It's probably actually more than that.
Yeah.
But then you would have an equal number of postgrads and other people and quite what you count as university. So it's not 100,000, but it is but it's significant,
substantial. Yeah. And you're right. You have a little synergy going on there with others in the area who are maybe not entirely sympathetic, but are sort of working in the same space.
And I think even that the actual university itself, and to be clear, what we are doing has got no connection with the university. We're not trying to pretend that that's there or something. We're simply in Cambridge,
right?
But the university has this sort of college model where you have a big central university, but actually things are very sort of divulged down into these colleges where you have people of all disciplines, living together, eating together, playing sport together. And it's something of that sort of college mentality and ethos that we're trying to, replicate in a very, small way in what we are envisaging. And it's also very cross-disciplinary. Because to me, to build a creation model needs people from just about every discipline you can think of. When you think of the sort of range of stuff that we need to explain. And, we, at a very basic level, we need theologians and scientists to be talking to one another. So often this debate is conducted without that, that combination. But we also, because they tend to sort of defer to one another, but, we also need, people with expertise in archaeology, linguistics, history, philosophy, all sorts of philosophical things to deal with here. And, well, you name it, we need it. So this is a place where you do have those people together. In lots of universities, you won't have a geology department. You won't have, some of these other sort of subjects. So this is a place where all of that is happening.
So it's strategically sensible for you to be there. So are you? So when you say you've gone to Cambridge, and I do want to reiterate here once again, you have not joined Cambridge University. You are not on the faculty. You're not a postdoc. You are not any sort of employee of the university. This is not affiliated with them. This is Cambridge, the town, Cambridge House, rather than Cambridge, the university, Cambridge House.
And we're not here to sort of cause trouble for the university either. Right. I mean, I'm, very grateful for all I've benefited from the university over the years. We're just wanting to do our stuff alongside, and if it's any good, people can take some notice of it. If it's rubbish, well, you don't have to take any notice. That's fine. But we'll go on with our stuff. You can get on with your stuff. That I think is the way it should be.
Excellent. So when you say you're in Cambridge and you want to put a study center in Cambridge, where are you thinking? Are you thinking like in the suburbs near Paul's house, or are you thinking downtown next to, I don't know, one of the colleges?
It needs to be central, I think, because Cambridge is quite a small, compact kind of city, and the students are congregated there in the centre. And if you want to have the kind of interactions that, we need to have with students sort of day by day, then you've got to be where the students are. And so it's got to be central. That presents all kinds of challenges, not least the cost, because Cambridge is one of the most expensive places in the UK to purchase property, so or even to rent. So that kind of raises an issue. But that's where I think you have to be. If you're out in the suburbs, you may as well be 100 miles away. I think. Yeah. You've got to be central. Yeah.
There is a strange local culture with students where if it's more than a 5-minute walk, it's seen as the end of the universe. I mean, it's crazy because plenty of university towns you're travelling all the way across town and stuff. But that is a sort of quirk of Cambridge student culture. And the university owns an awful lot of land. Actually, Trinity College owns half of the. Sorry, this is an exaggeration. A lot of land in the United Kingdom, full stop. For example, So, I think our initial aim would be to have literally a house, but a sort of big house that can accommodate a bit of a library, some sort of scope for having some sort of small scale meetings, that sort of thing. And I think, and in a way, deliberately a house to have a sort of hospitality sense to what we're doing. It's always good to have food, but this, Cambridge House concept, it's about community, it's about people physically getting together. It's realizing that it's not simply ideas that persuade, it's people that persuade. People persuade people. Research is undertaken by people, ultimately, not computers. And it's often the sort of informal conversation and everything that sparks ideas. And that's just how things work. And that, in a way, is what the university, I think, has recognized, and in a way what a university is, isn't it? It's a place where people are living together in this whole promotion of learning and research. So we're just sort of trying to copy that sort of basic model, and so that would be our initial aim. But it's a big first step because of the property prices.
Yeah. So conceptually, then, before we get too much far down the property price road, which we are going to do, Um, get back to the concept here. So a student at Cambridge encounters Cambridge House. What are they getting? Are they paying tuition to you? Are they have to pay a dues to use the facility? How does this work?
Well, they'll get a meal for a start.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
I mean,
As a student, I can tell you that would have attracted me right there. Oh, well, there's food? It's not cafeteria food?
so I mean, a lot depends on what happens next. But I mean, literally this week, we in a way began our very first activity, which was to have a group of students over a house for a meal and a discussion, looking at human identity. How do we know who's human? What do we do with these fossils like Neanderthals? What are they? How are we related to them? How does this fit in with the Bible? We could only really begin that topic. I think we realized actually how difficult it was to cover that in a short time, but that's sort of where we began. And so we want to sort of carry on with some sort of just informal meetings like that, where students can invite their friends, can just have a place to talk through this stuff. They don't all have to be on board to come along. Just sort of open to hearing what we've got to say. I think going forward there's obviously some more public meetings we can be doing. There's the whole sort of thing, I think, of having sort of summer schools or other sort of events like that, where you're getting people together for a few days, and ideally people not just from Cambridge as well, that this would be from all over the country. We're just a hub, and it's a sort of a place people like to come to, place people have heard of, so we can sort of use that to draw people in. And I guess also the sort of online resources as well, that again can be accessible for everyone. So there's a whole sort of loads of different activities. I think going forwards, we would like some sort of residential, some sort of student rooms, I guess, that we could rent out. So they would need to pay for something, but there'd be a bit of an income, but a way of creating a bit of community. And I guess the thing I've realized I've missed out is the whole idea of research projects. So where again, it might be quite small scale initially, a 2-week project, a 10-week project over one of the holidays or vacations, I should say. And it could be something bigger, but just the beginnings of starting our own sort of research profile over here.
And that
what
would
have
be
I missed, Paul?
That would be connected in with the students that are actually there.
Yeah.
It would not simply be you guys looking at rocks for whatever reason. You're
No.
training students to think Christianly
or
and
visitors
biblically
from
about
outside
these
as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I think I could see us doing the research in a number of different ways. So I think you've already got students who are doing research within their own sort of secular departments, and it may be that they're able to sort of steer that research in ways that are interesting to us as creationists.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just doing their usual sort of research, they're doing for their degree or whatever, but perhaps choosing topics that are of creationist interest. Or it could be, as Stephen says, that we actually have research projects that they can work on during the summer, or, for a few weeks, or guided projects. Or maybe we can bring in researchers from elsewhere, maybe from the States, bring you over, Todd, and have you sort of mentor a student for the summer. Or there's all kinds of there's all kinds of things that we could do. I think we're just trying to think creatively. How do we get a research program started? How do we get people interested? We're excited about creationist research. We've been doing it for years. How do we get the students here really, really interested in wanting to sort of make their own contribution? So that's what we're...
Aside from, obviously, we want to do research because we want to find out more, because we want to develop a model. We want to understand the world that God has made better.
Right.
That's why we're doing it. But to me, having a very strong research focus in this sort of Cambridge House project actually helps that sort of wider creation advocacy role. I mean, for one thing, it means you've got new things to talk about all the time, so you're generating new stuff. But as well, I think it just helps move the whole discussion away from sort of the abstract, well, how does science and Christianity relate and all of this, which, you have these sort of endless discussions that are sometimes quite sort of sterile. Whereas you can actually sort of say, when someone says, well, how on earth can you ever do science as a creationist? You don't have to sort of give an abstract philosophical answer. You can say, well, have a look at this project over here. Look at what we found in these rocks and how we're trying to understand it and stuff. And it just earths it, and people think, oh, so I guess you must be able to do this if these guys are doing it. Maybe I don't agree with what they're doing, but I can sort of see they are doing something. And I think that sort of physical presence, the physical reality of doing some research, will then helps to shape the persuasion, the whole discussion, just how the whole thing is conceived. And it shows as well, it's not just an American import.
Yes, and it doesn't just have to be scientific research either. I mean, obviously, we do want people to be doing geological and biological research and, research in astronomy. But we also want to be doing theological research and historical research and archaeological research, because we need expertise in all of these areas. And actually, Stephen will probably say more about this, but theological research, that's actually an area where creationism has been quite weak in many respects. We think that the science is where we meet all the challenges, and we've kind of got all the biblical stuff sewn up. Actually, it's not like that. There's an awful lot to do in relation to the biblical text and theological arguments for creationism. So we want to be sort of working with students in all of these disciplines and bringing in experts maybe from outside to sort of, or putting them in contact with experts to mentor them.
And I think that is actually, thanks for bringing that up, Paul, because I mean, that is particularly a side that I would want to be promoting. I mean, it's slightly ironic given my sort of professional background as a scientist, that actually this is more the area I'm working in now. But it's just how things have worked out. But also, because there is such a lack in creationism of theological thinking. There's an awful lot of exegesis. There's an awful lot of analysis of the grammar to the nth degree. As if only we can analyze the grammar a bit more carefully, then this will just prove it, and everyone will say, oh, yeah, I need to be a creationist.
Yeah.
And that's important. We need that. But how does all this fit together? How does this work? How does this shape our Christian theology? Because I mean, one of the things I've sort of learned as a pastor is just how your creationist thinking actually affects every part of Scripture. It's every time you come across death and suffering, it's a sign that something has gone wrong in Scripture, and yet that makes no sense if that's just the way God's made it and the way that's always been there. So we need theological research. I mean, when I started doing some work on the flood years ago, I was astonished to discover that really I could find, well, maybe I just couldn't find it, but I mean, literally nothing from creationists on the sort of theological significance of the flood. There was an awful lot on, why all means all, why, it's globally or whatever. But sort of, so what? If the flood was removed from the Bible, would anyone notice? Would it actually matter? And the only people that were actually really asking those theological questions were more liberal theologians who didn't care whether the flood happened or not, but they could sort of explore those sort of theological questions. So that's just a very sort of obvious example of something that you would have thought, well, creationists must be doing lots on this, but as far as I could see, they weren't.
I can understand that. I can see that. In my life, I remember one time I interacted with a non-creationist person who told me, it seems to me the main creationist argument is what the meaning of day is in Genesis 1.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was both hilarious because I thought, wow, you don't know anything about this, do you? And sad at the same time because I thought, wow, we've been doing a terrible job of communicating the importance and value and meaning of creation theology to the church. If literally people think it all boils down to what the individual words actually refer to. There's so much more than
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get back on our Cambridge House idea here. So you've got some thought of residential areas for some students. I imagine there wouldn't be a lot of that. You want a library area so kids could just come in and study there, maybe. Get
I
away
think
from
one way
the...
to sort of to get footfall is simply to have sort of study space.
Mhm.
So people go to libraries, people go wherever to study. Don't always like sort of being in their rooms to study. To create a nice environment where you can have a desk, you can have some Wi-Fi, we can give you some good coffee and some cake maybe on a good day, and you can talk to people a bit, and you happen to be sitting in amongst all these creationist works plus a few fossils and things, and occasionally you might ask, well, what is all this stuff on the shelf? And it's just a way of building up some contact that way.
Yeah.
But hopefully there'll be others who are actually coming as well, because they think, well, we do want to understand this creationism stuff more.
Right. And then through this house, then we have all the various programs. So you talking about not just programs for students, but you're talking about programs for the general public. Would you have things that like regular church folk could come to and learn about what's going on?
Yeah. We want to be a sort of resource for the church as a whole. So yeah, it's an obvious, when you're doing this and with the sort of name recognition and everything, it's obvious for us to be doing meetings that are open for the public. Yes, probably aimed at the church mostly initially, but why not? Wider than that?
Yeah. Certainly for the pastoral leadership, I would think you would want to have some outreach there as well.
Yeah, and I think for some of that, we would want something more sort of private as well. I mean, I think so many pastors are terrified of this topic because they feel very out of their depth personally. Maybe they think, well, I don't understand any of the science. They've got people in their congregation who perhaps are very expert in things and telling them what they need to believe on this.
Yep.
And they can just see, as soon as I start talking on this, the church will split into three, and you can understand their nervousness. So, and then sometimes when perhaps they have spoken to people, they've sort of been pounced on unless they've given the right view. So what we want to do is create like what we call a safe space, where if you like, you could come and have a few days away, read some stuff, talk with us as you wish, and just be able to work through this without being pounced on, but just to be able to talk through honestly, and in the end, if our arguments aren't any good, well, you don't have to believe them. You can work out your own answer. But that is certainly part of what we want to do. And I think that's, I sometimes likened what we're trying to do to be a combination of a research centre with L'Abri, as in Francis Schaeffer and the L'Abri network he set up, which and that name L'Abri means shelter. And it was originally in Switzerland, it was this place where people with all sorts of intellectual doubts and problems and just messed up in all sorts of ways would come to try and find answers. And if you like, we're trying to be a bit of a creationist version of that, a sort of safe space where you can explore some of that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, the vision is amazing. How much is this going to cost? I mean, you want to buy a big facility. I assume you're going to live there, right? So you need the place for you and your family, and then you've got to have student housing, and you've got to have facilities that are going to serve the students, like a library and I assume a meeting room. This does not sound like something that is on the cheap end. So what's your budget here?
Well, it certainly isn't cheap. I mean, we're trying to do this incrementally. Partly because I don't think we could cope with a project this big. We tried to do it all from the start, even if we had the money. So that's why I'm saying the first step is a house. So that is something, if you like, that exists already. You don't need to build a house. It's simply a case of trying to buy a property, or someone else buying the property and letting us use it. I mean, that's another option. If someone doesn't want to give us the money, but just invest the money themselves in a property or something, and then let us use it, would be one option. So, I mean, our initial target is of the order of £3 million pounds, although that's pretty much the same as dollars these days. So we benefit from the poor exchange rate from our end anyway. So it's yeah, so that's the sort of order of what we're talking about to get some sort of reasonably central large property. I mean, obviously more would be better. We could get something bigger, but that is, I think, a reasonably realistic figure to get something. But to do the whole thing with student rooms, other study areas and all of this, you are talking about millions of pounds more than that.
Yeah. And I mean, that sounds an enormous target. It's by far the biggest thing we've ever tried to fundraise for or to do. But it does just reflect really the reality of property prices in a place like Cambridge. I mean, that is by far the biggest expense. I mean, obviously, it would be great to have a budget as well to be able to staff this centre properly. Although, we've got kind of the resources at least to begin in a small way, because Stephen and I, can have input there. But we may need to think about taking on other staff in due course. Be good to have a budget for research, for some digital outreach. But by far, just the reality of property prices in central Cambridge is what's going to be the biggest expense.
Yeah.
But I think what we're trying to do now is, okay, we don't have that funding, but I'm here, Paul's, down the road, and we're trying to get on with something.
Mm-hmm.
And we could do a lot more if we did have that, and and each bit of funding I think we can use to increase what we're able to do. But we're not just sort of sitting around, waiting for a sort of donation and then we might think about starting. We have started, and if people want to help and join us with this, that would be great, because we need partners, and we need people praying. Sometimes we sort of make that a bit sort of perfunctory. Oh yeah, we need prayer, but I tell you, if there's one thing I've come to realize in the last couple of years, we really do need prayer. I mean, actually, we need that more than the pounds, because this is a spiritual battle. To in Paul's words, to demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. That is that's spiritual warfare, and so it is a battle of prayer. And to how are people going to be persuaded? How are obstacles going to be overcome? How is anything actually of real, substantial, lasting spiritual value going to be achieved? Well, it's not through us being brilliantly clever, strategic, or anything else. It's through the work of God's Spirit, who works through weak people. So prayer is crucial. So the more people we've got knowing about this, praying about this, supporting us in that way, that's what we need.
Yeah. So even without the £3 million, I mean, I'm a cautious guy. Let me just preface this. I'm a cautious guy, probably too cautious for my own good. So the idea, Stephen, that you've closed up shop and left your job and moved to Cambridge to do this is kind of breathtaking to me. I think, oh my goodness, what is he getting into? But I think it just shows the commitment of you and of BCT that Cambridge House is going to happen. Period. It's going to happen. And donors can get on board, and that'd be great. But the Lord will provide, and this is a ministry that's happening. And you already mentioned, I saw the pictures on social media. You guys have started interacting with students already. You don't even have a house yet. Is it just a little flat there? Do you have a rented house, or is it?
We're in a rented house, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for the time being.
All right.
And and it's not just me, it's the family. They've had to be committed to this, Hannah, and also the church. I mean, back in the church back in Kent, it's been an enormous help to me that when I told them about this, it was literally about a year ago that sort of became public to the church. I didn't know quite what the reaction would be. I mean, I thought the main reaction would be, well, why on earth would you want to do that? What's this is all a bit weird and strange. But people were, because it's perhaps a difficult thing for people to get, their heads around. Well, does this really matter that much? Shouldn't we just be going out evangelizing a bit more? And absolutely, we should be doing that. But we think there's lots of things that are needed in God's kingdom. This certainly isn't the only thing, or certainly not the main thing. But it's a little part of what's needed in God's kingdom. And so I was just so encouraged by the reaction of the church and their willingness to sort of support this call, to in effect sort of send me in that sense and say, we're behind you. And that has been a huge help, because you can always sort of start doubting, can't you, that, is this just some harebrained scheme that, we've dreamt up? And, because people do sometimes come up with things where you sort of think, yeah, I'm not quite sure that one's from the Lord. So to have that confirmation from other Christians is a big help.
Yeah.
I think it's fair. I was going to say, I think it is fair to say that as we've sort of been planning this, and sort of, putting this scheme together, we have prayed hard along the way that if this is not the right thing to do, that doors would close, so God would kind of not he would kind of only open the doors where he wants us to kind of move forward, and he has done that. There have been many occasions where we've just had small confirmations that seem to say, yep, you're kind of heading in the right direction. We don't know where we're going to end up. That's often the way, isn't it, in the life of faith? We don't quite know where we're going to end up. It's like Abraham being called to, to leave Ur of the Chaldees, and he didn't know quite where he was going or what was going to happen. But he had enough faith to take that first step. And it's kind of felt like that with Cambridge House, that we've been taking these steps. Stephen and his family in particular have exercised this enormous step of faith in relocating to Cambridge and leaving the church. But God has just sort of helped to confirm all of these steps along the way, I think.
I mean, there were several sort of game changers last summer, where if it had gone the other way, it would have been impossible or next to impossible to sort of come here, and it didn't go that way. And lots of things that could be shared. But I do appreciate Abraham a bit more now, I admit. I never really thought much of it before, okay, go and relocate, what's the big deal? But thinking, boy, it did take a bit of faith to do that. So I've learned a lot of lessons as a Christian in this, I can tell you. All this sort of stuff I would tell people from the pulpit, about how you're meant to live your Christian life and take risks and trust God, and he'll provide, and all this sort of thing. I've discovered, but it applies to me too. I'm sort of meant to be living this out. So
that's amazing. That's amazing. So how did the first meeting go then? You had how many students did you get, and was it a good conversation? Did they think you're crazy?
Well, probably a bit early to.
Probably too early to know.
To know that. We were glad they came. There was, I think, 9 of them in the end, and this was simply just through friends telling friends, because we haven't got a sort of massive amount of connections here already. So it was just a couple of people we knew who sort of spread the word a bit to friends. So we were encouraged by that, and I think in some ways small is better, particularly if you're trying to build friendships. So to get to know people, actually small is good. And I think, what came across perhaps, what I sort of felt was creationism can sound weird. You're talking about a particular aspect of, creationism. Well, do we don't really think, those fossils are actually that old. But it sort of comes as a piece. It's a sort of multifaceted thing, and all the pieces sort of fit together. So if you like, the power and persuasiveness of the creation model almost only is there when you see the whole thing. If you just look at one bit, you're always thinking, but what about this? What about this? What about this? And I think that's one of the things that is one of the problems in communication, how we sort of overcome that, how you build up enough trust that people will hear you on the particular thing you're talking about at the moment, and be ready to sort of put aside the other stuff and say, okay, well, I want to know some answers on that, but let me just go with these guys for now and see whether this makes sense on this. So I think that is a challenge that's always going to be there. But I think a lot of that is done by building up trust and showing, well, this is how it works here, and we're going to try and show you how it can work on that other area another time.
Mm.
So you've been at this more than a year now. Have you had any opposition yet? Anybody raising the alarm about those crazy creationists setting up an indoctrination center in sacred Cambridge? Anybody like that?
Well, we haven't been doing this for anything like a year. I mean, I only moved here last autumn,
Okay.
and
Okay, so it's not quite.
I was
been a
still
year,
doing
yeah.
stuff. So if you really
Right.
things have really only been the last month or so that we've really been focusing on this. So
Okay.
it is quite new. But it's funny you should say that. But it's actually in the last couple of weeks. There's been a bit of talk on social media that seem to have noticed our plans. Quite why they hadn't noticed this before, raised it before, I'm not sure. Because some of the stuff has been out there for a while. And yeah, I mean, it was sort of pretty much what I would have predicted. The usual sort of complaints that come, and I think often from a misunderstanding of creationism. And to be fair, we might say it's misunderstanding creationism, but it actually is accurately talking about some creationism they have come across, maybe.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
But in the end, we're not answerable for what every creationist says or does across the world and across history. So yeah, so there is, and that's sort of what we're up against. But in the end, it's about trying to win people over and show, well, come and see what we're doing. And you can have your view, you can disagree, that's fine. But if you like, be accurate with what you're critiquing.
Yeah. And I think some of the pushback that we've sort of had in recent weeks has only served to confirm to me how absolutely vital Cambridge House really is, because of so much sort of misapprehension about who we really are and what we're really about. Like Stephen says, perhaps based on bad experiences, maybe. But I think that what we're doing is genuinely different and genuinely new and interesting. And I hope that people would kind of judge us on what we do, not what they kind of fear we might do or what they, their bad experiences with others. I hope that we can, they can sort of taste and see, they can see what we're about and come and see it, like Stephen says.
All right. So let me ask you, I'm going to ask you a series of questions here just to clarify stereotypes regarding the opposition to your project here. You can answer them very quickly, yes or no. Hopefully this will clear up some misconceptions. So are you going to teach students to hate and doubt science? Is that your goal?
Very much the opposite to
Okay.
Well, I was about to say redeem science. I mean, that sounds a bit grand, doesn't it? I mean, there's plenty of people doing very good science who are not Christians or whatever. Person I learned the most about doing science from, my research supervisor, was an atheist. There's common grace, there's good science out there, and we're certainly not trying to attack that in any way. And I think, sorry, this is a longer answer to you're meant to be quick questions, weren't they? But there's a sort of almost bigger dimension to what we're doing that is in one sense, a bit over the top. But the whole sort of concept of university study is, to me, a little bit in danger today with the sort of whole way we understand truth, the way, different groups have their own truth, and the whole sort of suspicion, there is in sort of culture and everything. That I think it begins to make a sort of shared foundation for doing academic study a bit problematic. So I would sort of like to say, well, why don't we go back to actually an idea from the past, an idea where in many ways universities sprang from, which was seeing scripture as a foundation for study. And it's not that scripture gives us all the answers, that's why we need to do the study, but it's a foundation. It gives us a framework for doing that study. And let's try and do that in the area where perhaps it would be seen as the most controversial, namely origins. And you might think this is completely nuts, but let's do that. Let's start with scripture and let's see what we discover, what happens, what we find out. And let's see whether this is a fruitful research program or not. And I think if it is, it gives that thing, well, maybe these guys are onto something.
Yeah. I don't think
So
that's daft
it's
myself.
a big thing.
So, okay.
Well, I
So,
hope so, yeah.
next question: are you going to these kids who are get involved with your Cambridge House? Are you training them to like argue and harass their professors and become real nuisances at the university? Is this something where professors are going to have to watch out, warn people to watch out for those people, or are they going to be? Are you going to unleash some sort of army of annoying little apologists to go around and argue with everybody?
Absolutely not. We want any students to be the best students that there are, so that they know the topic as well as better than anyone else.
Okay.
So you learn about this stuff on its own terms. Yes, ask questions. That's the whole way of learning. That's important. But we're not there to harass. We're there to do an alternative. And I think part of that is being trained in the conventional view, understanding that well. And there'll be a whole load of stuff that is in the conventional thinking that we can actually use sometimes in creation models. It's not about actually ditching 90% or 99% of what you've been taught. It's often about using it in a slightly different way within a different framework, and you get some more interesting answers, I would argue.
I think so too. Yeah. So that's good. So Cambridge professors should not feel directly threatened by your presence in Cambridge. At least not in their daily work. Okay.
I mean, I want to see more creationist students who have a real love for science. And particularly disciplines which in the past they've kind of shied away from because they're somewhat kind of afraid and suspicious of them. I want to see more creationists who love doing geology and who love doing biology and astronomy and all of these other disciplines, paleontology. And, I want them to be good students. I want them to be kind of the best of their class, I want to cultivate in them a genuine curiosity about the world that God has made. Not to have a kind of risk-averse, fearful mentality, but to see it as an incredible adventure to be able to explore the world that God has made. That's the kind of positive vision I have. So I don't want to create people who are out to cause trouble or who are just wanting to tear down. I want to produce some nice productive scientists who are going to contribute and do interesting things and make new discoveries. That's what I'm interested in.
Sounds exciting.
And I think coming with just a different, you can ask some different questions. I think you can do some new things that actually contribute to science full stop. So, we can point to different creationist work where that work has been inspired by a belief in the Bible that has discovered things that no one else had discovered. And that's out there for everyone. That enriches science. So you might think the framework we're explaining it in is bonkers. Fair enough. But we are still doing something that benefits everyone. And that's how. And I think sometimes people that think I was about to say outside the box. I mean, people might see it as thinking outside the universe. I don't know, but is actually good if everyone just thinks the same. If you just have the group thing, that doesn't actually help conventional science, does it? It doesn't help the science that's going on. So, to have some people that are sometimes thinking a bit differently, asking some different questions.
Well, that's good. All right, last question then on this topic, at least. Is this really just a political scam? Are you attempting to take over the government, establish a theocracy, arrest people who teach evolution, burn some people at the stake? Is that what's going on here? Are you just trying to take over with your religious extremism?
Yeah, well, the burning at the stake's already happened. One, it's probably more in Oxford. Back in the Reformation. No, sorry. The short answer is obviously no.
Okay.
That isn't our aim. And I think, it's maybe a slightly dangerous line to go down on a podcast, but I think once we're fighting political battles, it's almost too late. To me, we're sometimes fighting political battles because we've lost the intellectual battle. And if you like, some of the sort of political issues we're fighting over today are actually because of ideas that became, accepted and perhaps not challenged sufficiently in universities decades ago, even centuries ago. And if you like, maybe I'm not enough of a historian to know how valid a sort of claim this is, but maybe there weren't enough evangelicals fighting those intellectual battles, seeing academia as this sort of ivory tower that has no connection to real life or something, or something to be feared again, like Paul was saying about, we don't want to go into those subjects. Well, actually, we did need people in those subjects to question and challenge some of these ideas that have become mainstream, that are now leading to the sort of political battles we're fighting. So if you like, it's a sort of, prevention is better than cure. It's a preventative strategy that ultimately is seen as for the good of everyone, and it's not about shutting down other people's views. It's everyone here is very welcome to do their study in their own way with their own frameworks. Be open about that, and let all these different flowers bloom, and let's see which is the prettiest, basically. And let us be known by our fruit.
Yeah. Well, that's good to hear. I have to tell you, here in Tennessee, we tried the whole arresting people for teaching evolution thing. That didn't work out so good. So I would caution you against that there in the UK. Don't try that. All right. Yeah. So
wouldn't. Yeah.
So £3 million you want to raise. How's that going? Have you gotten any big donations? Have you talked to anybody about this? Have you? Yeah. Do you have a little fundraising thermometer somewhere we can check in?
For a podcast, but yes, we've talked to quite a lot of people, and we're trying to make friends, and we're trying to, again, it's that wide base of support. We want people that can give £10.
Absolutely.
We want people, yes, that can give, £100,000 or whatever as well. Of course we do, but we need supporters of every stripe, every level. There's different, parts of the work, if you like, that need that fundraising. So yes, we are encouraged. That there's a lot that needs to be raised, but I firmly believe that God is not poor, and He will provide for what He wants us to do, and that may not be exactly what we set out in all our nice documents and things, as the grand plan that we would like. I'm sure His plan is much better than that, and so we have to be sort of sensitive to that. But He will provide for what's needed for the next step, and that's what we're looking to. And so the more people that can help us with that, the better. And I mean I guess there'll be a link on the podcast stuff.
Just gonna say, you guys want to?
Yeah.
Do you have a website where we can go to learn more about Cambridge House? Is it on BCT's website?
We do. We have a page. So if people go to biblicalcreationtrust.org/ch.html, CH for Cambridge House, obviously. And on that page, you'll find a video that we produced, a little sort of promotional video that we filmed in Cambridge, just to tell you more about the project. And there's also a kind of vision document that we put together that explains the vision in more detail, and also information about how people can contribute, how they can give, and if people want to stay in touch with us, they can contact us through the website and stay in touch, get added to our prayer letter list and that kind of thing, and so that they can continue to pray for us and for this project. And follow us on social media, of course.
Absolutely. And subscribe to Let's Talk Creation, because I guarantee you,
absolutely,
if there's a major breakthrough in this project, you will definitely hear about it here.
Yeah,
we will definitely be letting you know when things are starting to happen. So definitely follow us here on Let's Talk Creation. Well, guys, it's been great. I see we're out of time. Time to wrap up. Any final thoughts you have that you'd like to share here?
I'll just say this is something totally new. Building an ark's been done before. I mean, Noah did that, for example. but no one has done no one has done something quite like this, I don't think.
Yeah.
So if you're into something that's a bit new, very risky, and you could argue would seem completely impossible, then here's your project. And the service we had a couple of weeks ago, just when I was to sort of mark the sort of end of the time at the church, I was saying that this is almost like creation ex nihilo. It's not that we have some massive thing already that we're building this from. This is all pretty much starting from nothing. And the thing that reassures me in that is we have someone who knows all about creating from nothing. So we will see what he will do.
Yeah.
Well, I think Stephen said it all. I'm really excited. I have been excited about this project from the beginning. It's been amazing to me to see how God has already worked. As you say, we had our first student meeting just this past week before we recorded this podcast. And I would have been happy if we'd have had 3 or 4 students to begin with. We had many more than that. And others who were interested who couldn't make it along this week, who might come to future events. So I'm just amazed, thankful to God for the way that He's led us, provided already so far, and we look to Him for His provision for the future. And we're excited to see what He's going to do.
Yeah. All right, well, gentlemen, thank you so much for sharing that with us, sharing that vision with us. For those of you watching or listening, remember, if you'd like to make a contribution to Cambridge House, you can visit biblicalcreationtrust.org and find links there to their donate page right on the front page. And you can make your contribution and support that way. Or you can, of course, reach out to us, podcast@coresci.org. We will definitely share all those emails with Paul. That's our podcast email. And that's one way that you can also contact us. So thanks for listening. We're going to wrap up this episode now. Do be sure to like it and subscribe and all that jazz. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
See you in 2 weeks.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Let's Talk Creation. For more information, visit us at letstalkcreation.org, where you'll find an archive of past episodes and all our show notes. If you'd like to leave a comment or make a suggestion, you can find us on all the major social media platforms. Let's Talk Creation is brought to you in the U.S. by Core Academy of Science and in the U.K. by Biblical Creation Trust. As a listener-supported ministry, we are grateful for all of your financial support. Find out how you can make a contribution at our website, letstalkcreation.org. Also remember to like, subscribe, and share this episode with your friends. Thanks, and see you next time.